Welcome back. In the last video, we talked about a few central questions in spatial computing, and we gave you a bunch of examples. In this particular video, we'll talk about the user groups or the customers. So in recent history and currently, who are the people who are using spatial computing? Okay. So first, we'll point out to the business. Okay. So there are a lot of consumer to consumer applications and business to consumer applications which benefit from spatial computing. And one way to give a sense of the magnitude of business is to share with you a recent report from McKinsey, which is a very respected consulting institution in the business world, right? And they wrote a report on big data. And in this report, 2011 report, they dedicated a whole chapter to location-based services. And I want to point out, a small quotation about this report. This is from a New York Times article which summarized the report. And in this, I want to point out two different things. Okay, first, the magnitude. So you notice that McKinsey estimated that we'll have $600 billion per year, of value just derived out of all the location trace data sets that are coming out from applications like Foursquare and Looped. And many of these, you can think of them as volunteered geographic information that Brent mentioned. And later in the course, you will see this in a lot more detail. Okay. So businesses do use spatial computing. In fact, if you will notice the new logo of IBM, one of the largest computer company, it actually looks like a globe, and they have a label called Smarter Planet. So even big computer companies are in this space. Certainly Google is in this space and so on. And a little later I will show you examples of those. Okay. But in terms of category, let me also mention that it's also used by government. Okay. Many different branches of government need geographic information because they often manage very large geographic areas, right? So here is a picture from a congressional report. So US Congress was briefed on this technology recently. And in this report, they listed all the US departments of government which use spatial computing, and they are a member of this geographic data committee. So let me mention a couple of them very quickly. We talked about this cholera epidemic in London. So you can imagine that public health, which is under Department of Health and Human Services, is very interested. And that is indeed true. In fact, as this video is being recorded, many people are very concerned about spread of Ebola virus in Africa. And some of the people who are traveling from there to United States and other places. And you probably know Center for Disease Control is actually tracking the locations of these disease, which is what they do for all infectious disease. And they try to contain the geographic spread. Okay, another classical sponsor has been Department of Defense. In fact, there is a saying, and a lot of that you have probably seen in the recent warfare, which is very asymmetric, right? So the adversaries are often very, very unconventional. You don't know where their facilities are. And if you don't know their location, what good are your weapons, right? So people often say that maps are as important to soldiers as weapons, right? So clearly in many, many different countries, Department of Defense is a big user of maps and big producer of maps. In fact, some of the most accurate maps of the world exists where we have had warfare. Okay. And so on. Department of Transportation, we all use navigation application. And as you can imagine, a lot of this was driven by projects from Department of Transportation and so on. Emergency management is another one. We talked about Hurricane Katrina. They often have mapping done right after disaster to help people and so on. Okay. So let's go and get a little bit more specific. So what I'm going to do now is to show you actual companies and so on, who have used this technology to convey a sense that, our lives have been impacted a lot by spatial computing. You probably are already using it, but it's probably hard for you to imagine that 20, 30 years ago, it was a much more niche technology and the set of consumers were fewer. Okay. So if I go back 20 years ago, then the types of products that you would have seen are shown on the left-hand side. Okay. You would have seen ESRI, Environmental Systems Research Institute, and their popular family of product called ARC, and there is a number of products underneath that. This is used quite a bit in almost all geography departments, and more and more facility management, asset management, they use this. This is the richest set of software. You can make very sophisticated map and do nice cartography and projections out of it. But there were niche products as well. SAT-SCAN came out of public health. This came out of National Cancer Institute in order to find hotspots or geographic areas of high concentration of a disease. And now the similar techniques have moved to police departments for crime hotspots. You see Oracle Spatial. So in SQL world, people added a library to allow storage of data and querying in this world. And even IBM got on this, a few years later, and they do a lot of consulting in this world. Okay. But this has been changing. In fact, many of you probably haven't seen those products. That's the story of 1990s. What many of you have been seeing, and as Brent was mentioning, are products of this kind. So you have probably seen your smartphone and navigation application. Some of you may still have these GPS devices, which were really craze, about 5 years ago. But the smartphone is sort of tampering them down. So unless you are in really outdoor navigation on mountains and lakes, probably all you are doing is smartphone. But if you are going outdoors where you don't have as much GPS signal, mountain valleys and so on, you will see this other dedicated device, or even paper maps. And then you see these volunteer geographic information. Waze was just purchased by Google, and this collects, it encourages volunteers to report traffic information. And using Waze, you can actually know where police cars are if you care, not only where congestions are. But there are more serious things like Ushahidi, which came out of Kenya. And this allowed people to report on elections and other disturbances where the traditional journalists cannot go. But if you watch something through a smartphone app, you can tell the location and describe it. OpenStreetMap revolutionized the mapping itself. Even Google switched to this technology where you allow volunteers to take a satellite imagery and mark up roads and name them and so on. Okay? So it has changed. And this is another thing we want to convey to you. The traditional view, which many of us still have, was that GIS was a niche technology, and it was used only by people who were very trained. They needed a degree in geography to use it. Not anymore. All of us now use it because we have these nice services on the web and apps on the phone. Okay? But what may surprise you even more is the following. Back in 90s, maps were made by trained people, and they maintained very high quality. And today, lots of us are making map. Probably you are making map too. And you may say, well, maybe not. But if you are using a smartphone which runs either Android or the Apple's operating system iPhone, and you leave your GPS on, you are making maps because your locations are being collected and shared, and they are being used to improve maps. Okay? And this is affecting the software. So back in 90s, there were specialized software like Arc or this Oracle Spatial. But today, many other layers of your software are incorporating spatial things. So even your smartphone, you would have essentially a location, open location service to get your location. If you have HTML5, which is a language on the web, it supports location. Even the Internet Protocol, the next generation, is supporting location. So all layers of software are becoming location aware. Okay? And the expectations are rising. More and more people know about the locations. They want to do more things with it, right? At the same time, risks are also rising. Probably some of you may find it creepy that your cell phone locations are being collected, or your car locations are being collected if you have a GPS device in there. The laws and the policies and our expectations haven't kept pace. Okay, some countries like European Union are taking the lead in making laws, but a lot more has to happen. If it worries, if you have, some people call it geo-slavery. Some people are worried about, being followed by undesirable elements and so on. Those things have to grow. Okay. So again, the sense I wanted to convey is the following. Spatial computing is no longer a niche area. It's being used by all of us. There are a lot of great products, and many other new things can happen in the coming years. Certainly, it will affect society in areas beyond technology. Our laws and policies have to evolve. Okay. So people have been also thinking about it. There was a recent workshop at National Academy to flesh out these research issues. And in the coming year, the research community will be shaping this, policy community will be shaping this. And I sincerely hope some of you taking this course will kind of get excited and be an active participant and shape it, for years to come. Thank you for your attention. And in the next few videos, we'll come and delve into some of these topics in a little bit more detail.